If we want to tackle gender-based violence, if we want to wipe that out, if we don't want any more men to harm any more women, if we don't want any men to harm any more men, those men have got to learn how to understand themselves. They've got to like connect to their inner worlds and figure some of their own shit out. Boys don't feel connected, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel loved, they don't feel like the world is fair. They feel like girls and women are having a foot up, they're being helped, they're getting all of the support, that everything's against them, everybody's against them. Lots of that stuff isn't even true, but that's how they feel. The people who can tap into that the quickest, who have the ability to mold, manipulate, groom, control these boys, and nobody's teaching them to think, nobody's teaching them to think critically and for themselves. We individualize this conversation maybe a little bit too much and make it about specific behaviors in specific people rather than it being about a systemic issue.
What is up, podcast listeners? It's Chris, and I would love you to subscribe if you haven't already. It's the best zero-cost way to support the podcast and support the mission. This podcast has been going for 5 years now, and I am still here, showing up to these conversations, because I really think they are missing in the world of podcasts and the online milieu of what people are talking about. This is always about connecting to self, taking responsibility and accountability to the missions that we all share about connecting deeper to the places that we go. Follow and leave a comment. If anything resonated, I will get back to you. Please do. Big love. Is the school system in this country failing young boys?
Oh, in my opinion, the school, well, take a breath, think about the answer. What do I want to say about that? I think the school system in this country is failing young people, period. I think that it is archaic and it's not fit for purpose, unfortunately. Or maybe, depending, I saw a tweet the other day that was saying like, there's like 12 people in the world who are like rich and then everybody else is just staff at their holiday resort, right? Like we're all just like in the machine. But I think the function of schooling has always been to prepare people for working life.
Disappointment.
Yeah, well, some form of disappointment, yeah. And I think that I guess increasingly are existing in a world where the skills that we need to like survive, to be able to create communities, to be able to thrive, to be able to look after our mental well-being, to be able to feel happy and whole as people, are not being taught to us. And for lots of us, we are having to learn that either the hard way or go out of our way to like seek that education in Eckhart Tolle books, or I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like, where do you learn that kind of stuff? And I think if not at school, then what are we spending all of those hours teaching people? And I think like one of the things I appreciate about schooling is that it's so broad. Like I think that it touches so many different areas, and then obviously as you go through your educational career, you like niche down into like a specific thing you're interested in. But I just think there's a lot of stuff missing. And I think, boys currently are experiencing the hard end of that deal. I don't know how much of that is necessarily directly linked or directly the schools are to blame for it. I think also the ways that like boys are socialized to engage with each other, to engage with the world, to engage with their communities, to engage with themselves is not like those things are not compatible with the school system. So I think there are lots of boys who are just like in between a rock and a hard place and like trying to figure it out. But I think we could be doing a lot better. I think we could like, Jamie Oliver was onto it with the cooking classes and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just, obviously that was a joke, but like there's just things that like could be really useful. Like life skills, like learning how to do your taxes if we're all gonna have to pay those things. Like there's so many things that are like super useful that we don't learn. And so emotional regulation, I think, is like a massive thing. Communication skills is a really big thing that's kind of just left to one side, and it just becomes like a bit of a holding pen for kids. And I get it. I get why it is the way it is. But I think we could revamp it, and it would maybe lead to some better outcomes for our boys. and for our girls and for our non-binary and trans kids and for our teachers, our educators who are also like victims of the same school system, like overworked, underpaid, super stressed out, stretched really thin, often very dysregulated. Like it's a tough environment, man. School is. When was the last time you went to a school?
I went to a kind of a field day kind of vibes. It was a private school. I actually went into the school the week before. It was a private school. I can't remember the name. But I was invited to do some youth work with the kids. So there's a range of ages because it was a private school. But yeah, it was like Hogwarts. It actually got filmed. It actually got filmed for one of the potential sets for Hogwarts. So it was a real deal.
Right.
And they had a mindfulness class in school.
Gorgeous.
And it was quite groundbreaking. I met a guy at a festival, did a workshop for him, and he was like, you got to come and do something for the kids. Yeah, I could spend a long time talking about what happened, but it was pretty full on. But I was very surprised at their engagement, but also very surprised at the teacher's reaction to me, giving them a lot of freedom. Yeah. And it was more telling about them.
They're like, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you okay? Like checking in. And I'm like, just let this be what it needs to be. And then we'll see a lot more of the kind of response of what I offer. And that's what I'm looking for. Yeah. How people react to the thing, but not the thing itself. Yeah. But yeah, interesting. Thank you for going all over the place with that question. It's a big question, of course. Yeah. And I come at this probably from a radical point of view with, like, there's just a lack of self-led learning. And I think that is one thing that really supports kids. Like, I've been to Montessori schools. I went to one in London a few years ago. And that to me was like magic, because all the kids were a mix of ages and it just seemed to flow a lot better. Yeah. They were more active. They kind of chose what they wanted to do. And I can see, like, of course, issues with that, like long term, especially you couldn't just put all kids in that environment. But it definitely was a step in the right direction, I thought. But ultimately, what does it take to change, right? What does it take for you to go into schools and actually present some ideas and possibilities, and then actually be integrated? And like, what does it actually take to change something? Like, COVID was actually a really interesting time because we changed a lot in a short space of time, and that's quite inspiring. Yeah, we needed the belief, right? We needed to agree on certain things. I don't agree with what those things we agreed on
everything, but
but it was right. Wow, could actually do things quite differently. But we need a common goal and a common idea or story to change the narrative. Yeah,
and I think it does all come down to story. Like, what is the story that we want to tell, and what is the story that we want people to believe in? Like, how do we motivate people towards any kind of change? I often think that's one of the things that's like really missing. Coming back to that idea of like, is the school system failing boys? One of the things that is really missing in schools for boys is that story of like what boyhood or manhood looks like. Like, what can it be? What are the possibilities here? Like, what are the different versions that are of personhood that are accessible or available to you? And I feel like the stories we tell about it are just super boring. I'm saying this, I'm setting myself up for a trap because I don't know the answer. But I think maybe that's part of the problem, right? Is that there's an expectation that one person is going to have the answer, or one person's going to tell the right story, rather than like, there are as many stories as there are people, and there are as many ways of doing this thing as there are people in the world, right?
But I'm just interrupting the podcast to tell you about the Men's Inner Circle that I have been running for over 3 years now. This is an online community, subscription-based membership where we focus on support, accountability, commitments, leadership, integrity, and values, and really orientating to the people we want to be, to the men that we know we can be, and calling each other in on that, how to create a healthy challenge, and really being accountable to those things that we know we want to move towards. If you are interested in joining a space like this, then please, I urge you to click the link in the description. Thank you. Back to the podcast. It's a fascinating thing to start making content about, because everyone has done. A lot of people jump on the conversation because it affects us all. What does it mean to be a man? The masculinity crisis. But it depends.
Yeah, what does it mean to you?
It depends on everything, like time, place, race, culture. Like, there's a country to country. Like, we're trying to, like, people have so much to say, and I'm a part of this. Like, create a podcast and contribute to the conversation, because I think it's important, and it's a way to, tell a better story. It's a way to inspire people and to share ideas. It's an easy way to do that. But of course, and I would love to dive into social media, because it's a huge part of the transition of what it means to be a man also, because we have so many different ideas of it, and social media plays a big part. But I bring that up because so many people have things to say about it, but it just creates a storm of many different things. Like, what is it actually, what does masculinity mean? People are just like, I watched your podcast. It was Off the Chest, the boxing club.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Wow.
I was like, which one?
Yeah, no.
Oh no.
What was it?
Someone else.
Over a year ago. I think it was just after adolescence.
Yeah.
But I was like,
or maybe just before, actually. I think it had come out just before that second bomb exploded. Yeah. But
it was fascinating, because you were just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And that's what there's a lack of.
Yeah.
You were all challenging each other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I didn't agree with, but I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's fine to just, we've lost that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, including myself sometimes, that say like, I know, because that's attractive. And you've got a lot of people saying that this is how it is. And then the person which has always been the case, whether it's politicians or now people on social media, people with a very attractive tone of voice and a confidence, it's hard to tell like what is true.
Yeah,
who as a child
telling the truth here?
That is on social media and just seeing, oh, that person seems really sure that that's the case.
It must be true. Yeah, that was one of the most beautiful things about that series. Actually, Off My Chest was the journey off camera with the guys who were the guests each episode. So each episode we would do like maybe a half a day or a day with all of those guys. And so there's like hours and hours of conversation that doesn't make it onto camera. Often in small groups where you're just chatting and just figuring each other out and like having conversations about stuff. And I think really interestingly, after lots of the recordings, I would have like conversations with the guys where they would tell me a lot of crazy stuff, like a lot of like really difficult things that they were going through in their lives. A lot of stuff where once you hear it, it gives a lot of context to why their opinions are their opinions, or the places that they're coming from. A lot of hurt, a lot of joy, like all of that different stuff. And I think that is where the value is. It's so difficult to like distill that into content and give it out to people, because I think what we think people want is really different to like what the people actually want and need from those conversations. And yeah, I guess the bulk of my work really is like actually having those conversations in real life, like creating the environment for people to feel safe and comfortable enough to like actually figure it out with each other. Because especially as men, there's so many barriers that we like erect or are forced to erect going into any kind of interaction with another man. That's like, it might not be safe, so I don't want to show all my cards. I don't want to be vulnerable, because if I'm vulnerable, then I become a victim. Like all of these things that are like just in the way of that actual conversation that we need to have. And so I think, creating, that was like quite a special project, actually being able to like have the ability to make that space for those guys. And then you see like some people just chatting shit, like some people just think dumb stuff, or like, mask a lot of the pain that they've experienced as a well thought out opinion, or like they read something in a book somewhere, or saw some guy talk about it on a web series or whatever. But I think if you can get underneath all of that stuff, there's a lot of transformation that can happen for people on a very deep individual level.
Yes, totally. So what is it you do like practically? I would love to know, like, how does it look day to day, like going into schools?
Sauce. Yeah. I'm not telling.
But like you how big are the classes? Like just some basic things of like how you set up the work, what you facilitate.
Okay, cool. So for context, I'm the director of facilitation at Beyond Equality, which is a gender equity organization. So we work across schools, universities, workplaces, pro sports teams. So that's youth teams and adult teams. And then community spaces, which like basically is anywhere where there are guys, like anywhere where men are and they can't run away, we like having conversations. So that's how we kind of set it up. And I guess in those conversations, if you're asking like what's an ideal setup for the conversations, I guess in schools a good example is like we would always ask a school to do like a whole year group of boys at a time. So the first barrier is that people are always like, well, we've got a group of kids who we think are a problem. We want you to come and talk to these kids. And I think we individualize this conversation maybe a little bit too much and make it about specific behaviors in specific people rather than it being about a systemic issue and a societal problem that we have. So we take a whole year group of boys at the same time, we split them into small groups of 15. In an ideal world, we'd have 2 facilitators per group. That doesn't always happen. But we split them up and then we have them for 2 hours, 3 times. So we do 3 modules. The first one is on the first one is on masculinity, gender stereotypes and gender norms. The second one is on healthy relationships, sex and sexuality, and the third one is on preventing gender-based violence. And that order is actually super important because I think one of the places where we really get it wrong is like going in and trying to tell teenage boys who in lots of cases haven't perpetrated any or very much harm to anyone, and we want to tell them about like how they should be allies and why they need to stop gender-based violence without having a conversation for them about like whether this thing that they've been handed works for them. And so we try and give them the spaces to like have those conversations. And we obviously have like a plan. We know like the points that we want to get to, the spaces we want to hit, but it's very participant led. So basically we get into the room, we have like a set of activities that we'll run through. And most of it is just about like giving the boys voice, like allowing them to feel like they have permission to share who they are. I always get in trouble in these workshops because I spend way too long on the introductions. But I believe that the introductions are like non-negotiable, fundamentally important.
Isn't the boys introducing themselves?
Yeah, so we do like I'll ask them like, when was the last time you did circle time? And they'll all be like, oh, it's in like year 3, huh? And like do normal boy stuff. So like make jokes or try and palm it off or whatever. And as it transpires, probably the last time they sat in a circle and actually spoke about like things that they care about or how they feel was when they were about 8 years old. So they haven't done that for a long time. And so we get them into that space and we go around and we'll do their name, their pronouns if they're that way inclined, one word that describes how they're feeling today. But I always say like, you can't say fine, okay, good, happy, hungry or tired. We'll assume that you're fine, okay, good, happy, hungry and tired and give us something else. I try to give them like a second to like look inside themselves, but they don't really like doing that. And then I will ask them if they could have like some kind of icebreaker, like if they could talk to a celebrity, who would it be? Or if they could have any superpower, what would they have? But the reason that it's so important is because I think it really sets the precedent that like whatever they say, no matter what it is, we are going to treat it like it's valuable. So like we'll have like loads of back and forth and people will be like, I would be invisible. And I'd be like, that's weird. Like, what would you do if you were invisible? Or people would be like, I'd fly. And I'd ask questions about how fast they could go or where they'd go to. And so we go around this circle and it usually takes 20 minutes or half an hour. But by the start of it, I forget all of their names, but by the start of it, they all know that like whatever they're going to contribute is going to be taken seriously. And they also say that like if people don't speak in the first 20 minutes of being in a room, then they won't say anything. And so we want them to like feel like they own those sessions. And then from there, it's pretty much open book and like you dive into some conversations, some activities, try and surface like ideas, principles, gender norms, like what are the stereotypes, what are the things we expect of men, who do we expect men to be in the world, do you like it, do you not like it, what would you change, how does that show up in like the way that we relate to ourselves, how does it show up in the ways that we relate to each other? But all of this is like we try and do it not using adult language, so like trying to speak the language of the people that you're talking to. And yeah, by and large, if you can set the space up, like I guess in my role as a facilitator, the big part of it is that I kind of see it as like containers. And if you can set the containers up correctly, then what happens inside of them is what happens inside of them. But usually it's quite magical. If people feel comfortable and safe and seen and heard and listened to, they will deconstruct their own worldviews and beliefs about things by themselves. You don't have to do too much prodding. And so much of it is also about group cultures, like, so I guess as teenage boys, I'm sure you remember, we like quite heavily police ourselves and each other. And so giving them the permission to like step outside of that for 2 hours or for 6 hours leads to like a lot of social maneuvering, like a lot of change in the environments and a lot of vulnerability and openness between them.
Does it feel radical when you notice the shifts or change before, after? Does it feel like a radical act going into a school, creating somewhat of a container and a circle, allowing them to express freely, knowing that they're not going to be potentially judged, punished? Does that feel radical?
Yeah, it is radical. It's very countercultural to what school is, and not by any fault of any teacher or educator. I think just by design, the institution is not set up for. It's like learn by rote. It's like memorize these facts, pass this test. It's not so much about what they think or how they feel. For most of us, I think. So why we don't start doing that critical thinking until like university age.
Do you put that forward when teachers are surprised at behaviour? So let's just speak to boys, right? And we all know, like, studies, the stats out there that boys are not doing as well on paper than girls. And we have a relationship to bad behaviour and good behaviour, and we judge bad behaviour as a problem to be fixed and a boy to be punished. We still live in that dynamic. I'm open to challenge, but I think we do at school. So when you present this and get results, or I don't know how you define those results, but I know this is working. I know that can work and does work.
Yeah.
So when it does, do you not say like, yeah, this is kind of a big reason why these kids are acting this way, because they don't have autonomy. They're quite dysregulated. Because I've noticed when I've given, even in that short like youth work I did, they had like freedom to do things, and they didn't know what to do with that. They were almost like, oh my God, like I've never been like trusted before.
Yeah.
It was such a radical thing. And I'm just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like, we need to like titrate into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Too much is actually going to be just like completely dysregulating.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, people that don't know, is that they don't feel present enough to be with themselves or be with something that might feel like too much too soon.
Yeah, I guess we talk about it a lot in our teacher training modules for educators. And it's probably one of those things where like you say, too much is maybe dangerous, because sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't work at all. Like I'd be lying if I sat here and I was like, every time we do these workshops, the kids are amazing and they're so emotionally articulate. But in lots of cases, the majority of the cases, like, teachers are very shocked by the behavior of the kids that they expected to be poorly behaved, they expected to be difficult, they expected them to be antagonistic. And when given that space and that freedom, what you get back is like a kid who has spent the last 4 years of their education just waiting for somebody to ask them a question and listen. Do you know what I mean? Listen to their answer. Even if it's the first 4 answers are stupid, like they're making jokes, they're trying to impress their friends, they're dealing with all of the other social dynamics. There's so much stuff also about these kids that we don't know. There's so much stuff going on in their home lives, regardless of like the economic band that the kids are in, whether it's a public school or a state school or like a grammar school or whatever it is. Like, all of these kids have whole lives, like they have whole worlds that exist outside of that classroom, and they carry all of that in with them, but we never ask them about it. We very rarely, and again, by design, the institution is not set up to do that, because teachers are also under a lot of pressure and stress to achieve their targets, to get the kids through their GCSEs, to get them through their A-levels, to make sure they're getting higher marks on their mocks and whatever. You've got an hour to teach a kid long division. You don't care about like what's going on for them at their house, or maybe you do if it impacts their ability to learn. But I think, creating an environment where the learning is about exploring themselves leads to like really, really powerful results. And I think the difficulty is then how do we do that and get them to do all of the other stuff that they have to do at the same time? And maybe in some ways that means we have to reduce the amount of other stuff that they have to do, or maybe I'm wrong and this is all about making money and having a workforce and all of the other stuff, in which case maybe that stuff is a waste of time. But from the response that I see from the kids and from the response that I see from the teachers, people are like very pleasantly surprised by kids who like are usually on report, usually like asking to go toilet and not coming back for an hour and a half or whatever. Like those kids are the ones that engage the most in these sessions because they're so like craving the ability to like have an opinion, to be seen, to be heard, to share, and also to feel validation from their peers, I think is another big thing. So yeah, I'd say if you can get it right, it's like a pretty powerful space, as I'm sure all of us have experienced in our own lives as well at different points, right? Like whenever you're around somebody who actually makes time to listen to you, actually makes time to like care about what it is that you think or how you feel, you change as a person. Like you become much more malleable, much more versatile. You're able to change your opinion, think about things you never thought about before. So I think, yeah, creating that space is fundamentally important to see any kind of change or forward movement in any of those conversations.
And why you? Why is this important to you?
Oh man, why is it important to me? I guess I feel like I've been doing this so long that I very rarely tell these stories anymore. But for me, this came about at a time in my life where I was struggling to make sense of the world. I was struggling to make sense of myself. So like I grew up in like a really, well, my therapist might say different, but I grew up in a really well-rounded household. Like I felt like I was seen and heard. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. I've got 3 older sisters, my mum and my dad. My dad is like typical, very stoic man, like doesn't talk a lot, quite authoritative. My mum was like the keeper of the house while my sisters were young, and then as I was the last kid and started to go through my education, I think my mum started to study again, started to work again, and went back to some of the things that she was passionate about. And my wider family is like very focused on like education and community work. So everybody in my family is like either a teacher or a civil servant or a youth worker to in some way, shape or form. Most people are doing that kind of work, working in nurseries, like whatever it is. Most of us work with young people or the community. And I never really questioned anything growing up. I grew up in a Christian household. My dad never went to church. My mum used to take us to church every week. I grew up believing that was real. And I got to probably about 15 and had a really intense spiritual experience at like a church camp where, like, long story short, like I remember being in this camp and we were all singing songs and whatever, doing praise and worship. And I remember praying and saying, oh, if this is real, I don't want to fall over. And then one of my friends instantly in that moment fell over, and then it went crazy and like everybody was like crying and screaming and whatever. And it was all stuff, I grew up in a Pentecostal church, so this was all stuff that I'd seen growing up, but things that I kind of assumed would happen when I got older. So it was weird at 15 that this was happening to the people around me. And at the end of that event, I was like lying on the floor for probably about 2 hours, and I didn't feel like I could move. It was just a real sense that there was something bigger than me in the room, and I had no control over it. And so at that point, I decided I was going to take it really seriously. I knew I wanted to go into ministry full time. I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to work with young people. So I went to seminary. Well, I did a year of youth and community development for a degree, but I felt like I was wasting my time. Then I went to Bible college and did a degree in applied theology and youth ministry. I got kicked out in my last year because I had sex, which you're not supposed to do when you're studying theology at Bible college. And so I got to the end of that degree. I finished the degree, but was in a position where like all of the plans that I'd had kind of fallen away, and I knew where I was going to go, and then suddenly I couldn't go there. So I just came back home. Like I came back to Ilford and was like chilling, looking for work and whatever. And 2 of my sisters were like, you'd be really good at teaching. You'd love teaching. So 2 of them are teachers. And they really encouraged me to like try education, but I didn't want to study anymore. So I got a job as a cover supervisor, and I did that for 2 years until I started to like absolutely hate kids. My sisters were like, go in hard and it will be easy. So I spent 2 years basically acting like a psycho in a school, and just like bullying kids, like to make them behave. Because when you're a cover teacher, your main focus is like you don't want them to violate you. You don't want them to take any liberties in the class. And the outcomes don't really matter. It's just about behavior. And I hated relating to kids in that way, man. I just didn't like it. So I left there. I got a job teaching sex ed in schools around South London. And part of my job there was to develop a boys project about becoming a good man. And so it was like a complete chance, really. But I started I applied for the job, I got it. And in the interview, I was giving it large, like, oh, I know how to do this. I've been doing it for ages. It's easy.
How old are you then?
23. Okay.
And they were employing you to
teach boys
how to be a good man.
Yeah. So it was an interesting experience. And I got the job. I ended up developing this project about like rites of passage around the world. So it was like a do you remember Prezzies, like where you click it and it zooms to like a different part of the screen? No. Anyway, it was a Prezzie. And it was about like cow jumping ceremonies in South, wherever it was, and bullet and glove trials and bar mitzvahs and all of these things, like how societies had ushered their boys into manhood. Yeah. And it was a good project, but it just wasn't impactful. It didn't really change anything. And while I was researching for it, I was like looking up other people that were doing similar types of work. And there were loads of people talking about like getting in touch with primal forms of masculinity and taking boys into the forest and teaching them to like chop down trees and how to like lay bricks and build houses and reconnecting with purpose and all that kind of stuff, which is good. But I grew up with sisters, so I grew up playing with like hand-me-down Barbies and painting my nails. Do you know what I mean? Like that just wasn't my vibe. And
why not? I want to like look
so
at that a bit more.
That bit, I think for me, like I'd grown up as
was it just didn't resonate, or
it just wasn't for me. Like I'd grown up as a kid who felt much more seen and held by women, and I felt that like I was able to express myself in the ways that my sisters would. So a lot of it was to do with like music and drama and theatre and art and drawing and all of those kinds of things. I was a very artsy kid. I was also quite athletic as a kid. So I played basketball. And so I kind of towed that line right down the middle where like you just get away with it. Like nobody really questions you too much. You do what you want. It's pretty chill. But in terms of like, and my family are a cricketing family. So that was like my form of rebellion, was like, I didn't want to play cricket. And so everybody else in my family played like county or country cricket. And I was just like, nah, I'm not really on it. But I think for me, then going into an environment where I was researching all of this stuff and the answer was about connecting with those types of masculinity that had never really been modeled to me, I guess my conclusion was like, well, I know that's not true because I can see positive. I had positive male role models. I had my dad, my uncles, my cousins, all who were like great men in my eyes, who looked after their families, who looked after their communities, who gave back, who worked hard, who were like smart, educated men. And so for me, I was just like, not really. Like maybe it's about something else. Maybe it's about, I think, you know what it was? I probably, as a kid, watched a little bit too much Disney Channel and had always imagined this moment where my dad would like, teach me how to shave, and that would be when I became a man, and it just never came. Maybe because I didn't grow lots of facial hair, or maybe because my dad didn't, like just wasn't on that. Yeah, but that was always like my kind of idea of what the moment would be. So I think as I arrived in my 20s and that had never happened, I was like, oh, people just got to figure it out for themselves. Like nobody tells you what it means to be a man. You see what you see, you choose what you choose, and you be who you are. And so there's a lot of freedom in that, but like also a lot of like maybe wondering. And so when I was developing that project and researching other organizations, I came across the organization I work for now.
Was it the Good Lad?
Yeah, initiative? It was the Great Initiative at the time, then the Good Lad Initiative, and now Beyond Equality, which is terrible branding over and over again. But we'll talk about that another time. So I messaged them, I sent them an email and was like, can you share some resources? And they said, if I came to the training, I could have the resources for free. And I'd have to do like 3 volunteer sessions. So I went to the training. And I think for me, there aren't very many moments in my life where I'm like, oh, that changed everything. But that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, I get it. And it was the first time I'd been in a room, maybe actually the first time I'd been in a room intentionally with people who were openly queer. First time I'd been in a room with men who were talking. Like the first time I'd been in a room where I felt like I didn't just have to pretend I knew about football and talk about that to fit in. Like, it was like a lot of stuff about diving into your relationship with your dad, or like how you were educated, where you grew up, like what things have happened in your life, and lots of people sharing very openly and very honestly. And then the introduction of what I later learnt was an intersectional feminist framework that kind of explained some things around the ways that the world worked, and the reasons why, or maybe potential reasons why we're in the situations that we're in. And for me, it was much less about like the theory and the framing, and much more about the experience of being in a room with other guys where I felt like I was connecting. It was also the first time that I had come to terms with the fact that I was struggling with my mental health. So I remember being in the training and them asking questions about like, how do we relate to mental health, and like doing activities around it, and realizing that it wasn't healthy to go to the toilet at work and cry during your lunch break. Like, that wasn't just a normal thing that everybody was doing. And like, because like this is going back 10 years now, when the conversation about it's okay not to be okay wasn't present. Like, all of this stuff around mental health and men's mental well-being wasn't here. And I think I was just really struggling. Like, I felt...
You were going to the toilet crying?
Yeah, man. I was in the job I was in, I just wasn't happy. I didn't get on with my boss. Like, it was just us two in the office at the time.
You thought that was normal?
I just assumed everybody hated work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just was like, that's just how work is. Nobody likes it. It's what it's like. And I think, first time realizing that maybe I was struggling with depression. I had a lot of anxiety. Like, I was anxious about being late for work. I was anxious about missing a train. I was anxious about not having my oyster. Anxious about everything, every day. And so being in that room didn't fix any of that stuff for me. It wasn't like a magic pill or an antidote, but it gave me the ability to like step outside of myself and view it as a phenomenon that was happening, that I could have some control over. And also gave me the community and the resources to like figure it out, like people to talk to about how do you find a therapist, like who do you talk to, like how do you process some of these things. And it was crazy because the whole thing was actually about ending gender-based violence. So I think my entry point to this conversation was very much rooted in these two things are like intrinsically linked. If we want to tackle gender-based violence, if we want to wipe that out, if we don't want any more men to harm any more women, if we don't want any men to harm any more men, like those men have got to learn how to understand themselves. They've got to like connect to their inner worlds and figure some of their own shit out. And so the process of doing that for me, I started as a volunteer, right? Like I went and did some workshops for free in the schools. And then a year later, a job came up and I applied for it and I got the job. And so I've been here ever since. But I think for me, feeling directly the impact of like how drastically that shifted my relationships. My romantic relationships changed tenfold. My friendships changed 100-fold. Like it was like the ability to like go deeper in conversation with some of my friends, to ask questions, to like see other men in my life as spaces to explore stuff. And those are the things that like generally stereotypically you would only do with a woman, you know, as a guy, like you would only go to a partner to like explore your internal world and you would hope that they would get it right. But like realizing that you can do that with like other guys, you can talk about how you're raised, like your family, you can talk about things that you're scared about and all of that kind of stuff with other guys, I think for me was like a very transformative experience. And it was also the first time that I realized that my sisters had a very different experience to me, you know, like that as women, as black women in the world, they were not living the same life that I was living. And I think one of the big things I got from that training was the ability to go to women and ask them about their experiences and be able to hold space for what they were saying. And just realizing that like I'd been gaslit like my whole life. I just believed that we were all the same. And actually we're so different. Like people are experiencing shit that you have never thought about. Like just stuff that like sexual harassment it was so much more common than I realized. And I started to realize that like a lot of the guys I'd grown up with, a lot of the guys I'd spent a lot of time around, not that they were necessarily perpetrating, but that they were normalizing that stuff so much, and they didn't even realize they were doing it. It wasn't like this guy's a horrible guy, he's a terrible person, he's assaulting women. It was just the jokes that we told, like the music videos that we watched, like the things that we had internalized as being normal were actually not that normal, were actually like really harmful, and that we had an option, we had a choice, we could change it if we didn't like it. And so for me, that's how I got into it. And once I started having that conversation, I think I just realized how important it was for other people, you know, and my life up until that point had definitely been geared towards helping people. Like I'd wanted to do something in the world that would help people, and the whole thing that I had grown up in had crumbled in front of me. Like it was like, that doesn't work, like that Jesus doesn't care about mental health, like it's not gonna sort you out, it's not gonna help you. That was my experience, not generalizing, just for me. And so coming to the end of that and then stepping almost straight into like a new way of seeing the world was like very disorienting, like very, very destabilizing and quite jarring in lots of different ways, but like super important, man. And realizing that there were ways you could have that conversation with kids, you could have that conversation with young guys in universities, you could have that conversation with men in workplaces, and they would go home and have those conversations with people around them and then come back and be like, I didn't even realize, like I had no idea that like I was stuck in this idea of what it means to be a man and this way of being, and it just doesn't even help me. There's so much freedom outside of it, you know? So it's like, it doesn't, I think, yeah, for me, it didn't result in like me having to change who I was. I didn't have to become like a completely different person. I didn't have to speak different. I didn't have to wear different clothes. I didn't have to act like a different person. It was literally just a very simple shift in understanding the world that drastically improved all of my outcomes, my physical health, my mental health, my relationships, my well-being, like all of those things like just changed. And so like, why would I stop? Do you know what I mean? Like from experiencing it, I was like, I have to keep doing it. Like I have to find a way to like scale this and give it to more people and help more people have this conversation so they can at least try and figure it out. And then over the years, as you do more and more of it, you also realize the limitations of it, right? Like it's not just as simple as like tell people about intersectionality and they change. Like it's also, people have got real material needs. Like people are poor. Do you know what I mean? Like people have experienced men have experienced sexual violence, sexual harassment as children, and nobody's ever spoken to them about it. There's so much stuff that's going on that just doesn't get addressed. So creating spaces where guys can like learn how to do that, or at least start on that journey of addressing it for themselves, I think is a real tool for transformation.
What are some ideas to facilitate that just on a day-to-day basis for people? Because it is true, when you create context for people's experience, we forgive easier, we don't judge as much, like we'll always fill in the blanks when we don't understand something. But if you don't understand something, you've not really looked hard enough. You've not really asked the questions. And I do think everything makes sense in context, and when we have that context, we will have more compassion, more empathy. Like it's just a natural progression. So how do we facilitate that more? If that is really, that's one of the antidotes, really. Do you know, I guess a big thing for me is over the years of doing like learning design and product development and programs and like developing all of this stuff, the actual thing that really makes a difference is just how you show up, like how you show up in yourself. And I think the whole thing is like a permission giving exercise. So like, especially when it comes to men and masculinity, like there is so much that happens without any words being said. There's so much in like the way that you greet your friends. Like if you walk into a room and you hug someone for like 6 seconds, so an extra 3 seconds on top of the normal, like, oh, how you doing? Like, and sometimes it feels like a little bit uncomfortable, sometimes it's a little bit weird, or you ask someone how they're doing and they say fine, and then you ask them again. And like, these are not complicated things, you know? Like, I think what people
are often looking for is like, you have to say this thing in this order and it will do this, it will have this impact. But actually, I think it's just about showing up, being present and being vulnerable. And I think the interesting thing I found is like, unless you're willing to be vulnerable, there's no exchange. Like, people don't step into it. They don't meet you halfway unless you go the halfway first. And so that might be like, sometimes I have like really weird conversations with my friends where it's almost like a stream of consciousness, and I just tell them, like, they don't ask me. I'll just be like, oh bro, like I was thinking about this thing the other day, and I'm really worried about like this person in my family is sick, and it's making me think about like my own mortality. It's making me like wonder about like this thing, or like I've seen somebody over here who's lost a parent, and it's making me think about, if my parents pass, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with that? And people are desperate to have those conversations. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody is worrying about the same stuff. Everybody is feeling anxious about the same things, and nobody is opening the conversation. So it's things as simple as just asking a question, or leading with your own experience and just being open to like the feedback and holding space for what comes back. I think is very, 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 very powerful, very impactful. We did a program a couple of years ago with Movember, which was called Speakeasy. And one of the principles of that program was about the permission giving, and about like leading with your own story and your own experience. And I think especially in relationship, that becomes very, very important. A lot of the ways we facilitate is we don't tell our own stories. Like, we want to create spaces for the stories of the participants. But in your actual relational life, I think giving people that, offering that part of yourself, because it's also scary is the other bit, right? Like, is the vulnerability. I feel like we've tried to do this rebrand on vulnerability where we're like, it's strong to be vulnerable, or like it's brave to be vulnerable. It's actually just vulnerable to be vulnerable. Like, it doesn't always feel great. It doesn't always like work in the way you want it to work.
No, it's not always necessary.
Yeah, man. But if you can give that to people, it's such a gift to give, because it allows them to feel like they can also give that back. Yeah. And that's where the magic is, you know?
For sure. So, yeah, totally. I think it's important to recognize what the tendencies are, though, for like how we relate in those different ways. A tendency might be to try and offer someone advice, for example. It's often it happens. Men have fix it. It's like, it's a very practical way, and often a very logical way of relating and supporting people, supporting our friends. But it's magical when you can just offer a question or just listen. As you said, it's like, just be there, just be present. Have there any tendencies that you've had to overcome in that sense? Like some things that you've had to, oh, that's not actually working, I need to work on that.
No, I'm pretty fucking good at it, man. No, I think the urge to fix things is a big one. For me, it's probably the urge to know the right answer. And I have a real aversion to ambiguity. I think also that like might be like late stage in my life, realizing that I'm maybe more neurodiverse than I thought I was, but I hate like not knowing the right answer. Like I hate cooking from a recipe book when the recipe's not very clear. I hate like setting up a TV without having the instructions. Like, I'm a very like, show me the right way to do it one time and it's fine, I'll be able to do it. And I think conversation can often feel like that. Like there is a correct answer that will make someone feel seen or heard, or change their opinion, or reconsider something. And that's just not how it works in real life, you know? So I think especially when I started doing this work, one of the things that I really had to fight against was wanting to tell people what they should think, wanting to tell people what the right answer was, wanting to move them to better outcomes, because out of the kindness of my heart, I know the answer and you don't know it. So I'm going to help you get there rather than just being in relationship with people. And I think learning to switch that off has been quite difficult for me as a person, like learning to go against that internal motion towards like, here's the answer.
Would you say that was coming from love or fear?
I think it was a mixture of the two. I think it was in some ways coming from my genuine desire to see people like be okay.
Yeah.
In some ways, my fear of like what happens if they don't get it right. And in some ways, I think there's also a bit of it that is just like a bit of a superiority complex. Do you know what I mean? It's just like I wanna hold secret knowledge. Like I want to be the person that has the right answers. I want to know. Like I want to be the person that's your mentor. I want to teach you and move you in the right direction. But I think the longer you think about anything is the more you realize you have no idea what you're talking about. Do you know what I mean? The more you dive into anything is the more you realize it's more complicated than you thought it was. And so the longer I've been having these conversations and doing this work, I've come to a realization that this is a very simple entry level conversations, very basic tenets of like things, ways of thinking. Like, don't be judgmental. Try to, like, while we're in this space, let's try not to judge each other. It's not complicated. It's hard to do. It's not a complicated idea. And so I'm not special in any way because I am the person telling people that we should do that or asking people to consider to do that. It's more that the people who have the power in that situation are the people in the space. Like they're the only people that can change anything. They're the only people that understand. They understand their context better than me. They understand themselves better than I understand them. They understand everybody's got their own lived experience of gender. Everybody's got their own lived experience of masculinity. So all of these people are like carrying all of these different things. And the best thing I can bring to that conversation is curiosity. It's that the most valuable thing I can offer is just to be interested and to like leave some space. And sometimes it means like we get a little bit wild and you got to steer it in a different direction. But like mostly it's all about, compassion, patience, and never forgetting who you are and who you have been, you know, like I always go back to my first day doing that volunteer training and think, it's probably the reason why I find it so difficult to like judge people in the workshops, because I was worse than them. Do you know what I mean? Like I thought more fucked up stuff than they think now. Yeah. Like I've been weirder in my brain than those people are in this conversation today. Yeah. And so it's like there's a long distance to travel. All of us are on that journey for the rest of our lives. We're never going to get to the end of it. Like there's a lot of unlearning and relearning to do. And you need other people to do it with as well. So it's like much less about that responsibility, that feeling of like, I have to fix it. That's another thing, was a big thing, is the easiest trap to fall into is like, I can fix this problem. Like when I started and we were talking about ending gender-based violence, it's very easy to become the guy who's like, don't worry ladies, I'll solve it. I'll fix this for you. I've figured it out. Like I've read a Bell Hooks book now, so I'll do it. And it's much more about remaining in community, remaining accountable to other men, remaining accountable to women who will call you out, who will like challenge you on some shit that you don't want to hear. And I'm not the best at being called out. Some of my colleagues will tell you I'm not the best at being called out. But I think that process is also like a thing that is a constant learning journey. But I don't think any of it can be done in isolation. I don't think any of it can be done well in isolation. I think we all need each other desperately because we all have so many blind spots, you know?
For sure. Loneliness is a big thing.
I know.
Are there any challenges in your life that would be hard for anyone to see that you experience?
Challenges in my life that would be hard for anyone to see. Give me a little bit more context. Just
anything that like you don't speak about often, or just something that might be really uncomfortable, or maybe it's relating to how you show up online, or anything that you deal with that you think would be hard for like someone who watches the podcast, would be hard for them to really see or realize.
Oh yeah, like normal stuff, like I guess without going into too much detail, at this particular moment in time, people in my family are not super well today, in this like last couple of months, and my partner's also experienced a bereavement, like quite a significant one. And so I think there is a struggle with balancing output and presence. Like there's a struggle with like feeling like you need to be someone to other people, and also feeling like you have the ability to do what you need to do to be a full version of yourself. I guess that's super ambiguous. I guess another one is like, I'm not a very disciplined person. Like I'm not like a, I don't think I'm who I would love to be in regards to like my physical health, in regards to my mental well-being all the time. Like I think I go through periods of time where I'm like on top of it and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then I go through other periods of time where I'm like, it'll be fine. And obviously it won't just be fine unless you do things unless you're proactive about it. And so, yeah, I think the big one for me is definitely how I deal with stress is very unhealthy.
You just do more.
Not even that I just do more. I'm quite avoidant, actually. Like I'm quite like...
Well, you won't face the thing that you know is causing the problem.
Yeah, if I can avoid it, I will. And I...
Why do you think that is?
Why do I think I'm avoidant? I think that I probably find things difficult, and I don't like not being good at things. So when I find things difficult, I just would rather not do them. Like I'd rather like if it's like a basic example is like if it's like tax, I've got to pay my tax. Yeah. We're in January, and my accountant has been sending me emails for a long time now, since last time, and I just don't want to log onto that email and go through my bank statements and say, do you know what I mean? I just don't want to do it, so I'd rather avoid it. But I think that's not even something that is like particularly stresses me out. I think like in regards to how I show up at work maybe is an interesting one. Like my attitude around how I deal with being stressed at work is not what people would expect, having seen a version of me online, you know? Like I'm very like neurotic, and like I get agitated, I get annoyed, I get angry, and I stew on things. Like I'm not a person that gets over things very quickly, so I have to be very intentional about creating space to work through. And therapy has been great in that regard, because I can have a controlled environment where I can go. But what I find when I'm in therapy for 6 months is that I just spend every week talking about the same thing over and over again. That's obviously what I need to process it.
Maybe, yeah. But sometimes awareness or that, it is an action, like speaking it, bringing it forward, but it's also without action on those things, depending on what they are. Is like that's the trap, I think, for men. It's like talking about stuff all the time. It kind of gets us some way. It really works for a lot of people, but I think most people have to do something about it.
Yeah.
They have to implement things. They have to change something. They have to change their friendships or start to act or do things differently.
You know what my thing is with it is that I always assume that whatever I think is correct, because if it wasn't correct, then I wouldn't think it. Do you know what I mean? Like I always think logically the conclusion that I arrive at must be the correct conclusion, because otherwise I wouldn't arrive at it, which is a very conceited way of being in your mind. But I think that means that I struggle with the pattern recognition element of like behaviors. So like if I'm doing something, like how I deal with stress, for example, if I just stew on things, it's like I don't recognize that I'm doing that. Like in my mind, I'm like, this is a valid thing to be angry about, or this is a valid thing to be annoyed about, and it impacts me. Like I carry all of my tension in my shoulders and my neck, so I'm always forever having massages on my shoulder and my neck to try and get it out and blah 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 blah, instead of dealing with dealing with the thing and changing my lifestyle so that is not a constant pressure or stressor for me. So I think, those things are things that I feel like I could do a little bit better at. Better, maybe not the best way of framing it for myself, but I think those are things that I would like to invest in more. Like those are parts of myself that I think for the longevity of my life, for my well-being, for like my community around me to be happy and healthy and also feel comfortable to be around me, it would be good if we could work through some of those things and get to some better conclusions. And I think, that's also a big part of it. I guess there's a big part of being visible. Like, I'm not super visible, but being visible online, and having built a career out of being the guy that talks about men and masculinity and men's mental health and men's mental well-being and blah 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 blah. You can present as the finished article very easily. You can walk into a room, and I think we as a society are so starved for public male role models and figures that anybody who looks anything like it will take it. Like, people buy into it very quickly. So if you walk into a room and you're like, I'm Ben and I'm here to talk to you about masculinity, people just want to believe that you're a good guy.
We project also,
honestly, and we're not always that, we're not always that way. We don't always think the right things or do the right things. Like, if you could see how my partner and her daughter challenge me on some of the things that I say, I'm sure people would be shocked and surprised. But like, I think wrong things too. Do you know what I mean? Like, I try to like bear that part of myself. I feel like anybody who knows me in real life, anybody who's met me in person, will probably think that I'm like a pretty normal person. But I think the image that I can present of myself online can be very different to that. So I try and avoid as much as possible being like super present, like or chronically online, because I just don't think it's real. I don't think it's real life,
It's not.
Yeah.
It's a great point. And I think, how do we strike that balance a bit more? Because I've heard you say that you say so much inappropriate stuff, or that you don't need to
I
be
didn't
on
say that.
social
I
media.
didn't say that, actually. No, yeah.
Not inappropriate, but like stuff that like you think 1 minute and then
you change your opinion relatively quickly. But you think the stuff. You do think it. Yeah.
But also, it's not in your control what people take snippets of and put online and polish you up to.
It sounds like a threat. No, it's not. It's not in my control at all. It's not.
You get to proof it.
Yeah.
But it's the nature of sound bites. It's the nature of Instagram, short content, short form. That's why I love podcasts, because we actually get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Than
get to really talk.
It's like, how do I condense this thought into a minute? That's my daily challenge. Like, most days I'm like, how am I supposed to relay this into the online world so people actually can understand, but not like get the wrong impression of what I'm trying to say. So it's a skill, right?
Yeah.
But because of that, it gets very conflated, and it's a whole whirlwind. Social media, let's talk about that, because I think this is one thing, coming back to the beginning of the conversation of what's going on, what's unhealthy environments for young boys, and it's going to be the online world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come at this maybe from a different point of view, which is New World Order and the people that are in charge that get rumbled every day and a half, like whatever it is. It's like armies, oil, just
gold,
terrible things, making decisions. Court saying the same thing as a president 10 years ago on repeat, just like evidence you cannot refute. Like there are just like, people are so good at making content. Yeah. It puts things right into the forefront of our minds that we're being lied to, that the world is somewhat rigged. There's stuff going on that we don't understand. And this gets into the psyches of young boys, and they're like, oh yeah, fuck. Like, I'm going to school, and kids are smart. Like they figure this stuff out, and they're like, yeah, what am I supposed to do? Get a job, go down this like route. And it seems like such a challenging time with so much information, and you can go down a rabbit hole and understand it. Wow, I'm going to begin to question everything, including what I'm doing with my time, where I'm spending it at school, university. And it's just an awful thing that I can only imagine what a kid must be going through with access to all this information that I've not really done a great job at articulating. But it's like the world and the people that are in power and the structures that are in place which is somewhat of the patriarchy. It's like remnants of these norms that are kind of enforced on us, that young boys have this awareness, and they're like, wow, like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I think that is a fundamental problem.
Yeah. They've got a strong sense for bullshit, I think. Like stronger than I had when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know?
Like no one trusts their government.
Yeah.
Like, no one trusts authority anymore.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to come down to like, do I trust the teacher? Who are they working for? Like, what's going on here? Like, I can only imagine like what kids think.
And I think the scary part of it is that I think that kids today see social media as neutral. I think they for all of the conversation that's present about algorithms and silos and sorry, my words are failing me. For all of the talk that is present about algorithms and about silos and about echo chambers, they don't seem to realize that they are in one. You know, like they believe that everybody else is wrong, but the accounts that they follow on TikTok are telling the truth. And the places that they're getting their information from are accurate, but everybody else is being fed a lie. And also not just kids, I think that's us as adults as well, right? Like I think we're being politicized and radicalized in different directions. And we very rarely take a moment to step back and see the trees from the forest, you know, trees from the woods, or whatever the phrase is. And so I guess for the kids now, the big question is one of digital literacy. And I think the natural instinct is always to like police and protect and shield. Like we want to take kids away from the internet, or take the internet away from the kids. We want to stop them from accessing it. We want to put age bans on it and verifications and all of this kind of stuff. And I don't necessarily disagree with that stuff, but I also think this is the world that they're living in. And increasingly they're going to be more online than they have been to this point. Especially with the rise of AI and all of the changes that's happening, or the changes that are happening there, and their ability to access even more information, even more quickly, and to formulate thoughts and opinions and views that they don't even have to actually think to arrive at the conclusions anymore. I think teaching kids how to navigate those spaces is going to become absolutely fundamentally important. The difficulty with that is that for lots of us in our generation, we haven't been taught how to do it. We've grown up with the thing, and we're still figuring it out in real time as well. And so it becomes a very dangerous space to be in. I think there are a lot of bad actors in those spaces, in the online spaces. And I hesitate to like paint the internet as like a massive evil. I think internet is like chaotic neutral at worst, you know, like it's just a thing that exists, and there's a lot going on, but there are a lot of people who are trying to make a lot of money, or their goal there is to make money, and they will take advantage of whoever they need to take advantage of to do that. And so in the case of kids and young men in particular, there's a glaring need that's present. Boys don't feel connected, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel loved, they don't feel like the world is fair. They feel like girls and women are having a foot up, they're being helped, they're getting all of the support, that everything's against them, everybody's against them. Lots of that stuff isn't even true, but that's how they feel. And the people who can tap into that the quickest and the loudest are the people who have the ability to mold, manipulate, groom, control these boys. And nobody's teaching them to think. Nobody's teaching them to think critically and for themselves, and giving them all of the options and saying, which conclusion do you arrive at? Okay, here's some questions about that. People are just trying to say, this is the answer. So you get people like an Andrew Tate, you get people like... not to name all of the people, but you get like these types of influencers in online spaces who are then providing these blueprints for boys about how to be successful, how to be rich, how to be ripped, how to be disciplined, how to get women, like how to do all of these things that boys want to do and also have been raised to believe is their birthright to do. Like we've also been socialized and taught, even through fairy tales, that it's our right to get the princess at the end. Like that is what it means to be a man. We protect people, we provide for people, we fight the dragon, we save the princess, we get the money, we find the treasure chest, all of that stuff. And so the real conversation is a lot more difficult because it's about redefining what success means for each individual person, and also even more difficult because it's about acknowledging the actual systems that we live in that do oppress people, that do mean that there are loads of people who are living below the poverty line, that do mean that there are loads of guys who don't feel a sense of purpose because they don't make enough money. There are loads of guys who feel like they're not in control of their own life because they don't feel like they're the king of their own castle. And maybe they shouldn't feel that way. Maybe that is the construct that needs to be dismantled. But instead of doing that, what we're getting is the quickest answer, which is, if you want that, here's how to do it. And so boys, I think, are really buying into that narrative that they're seeing online. And understandably, like, you also have to understand how a teenage brain works, right? Like they want to differentiate from their parents and their caregivers. Whatever we're saying to them, they don't want to listen to that. They want to find their own way in the world. They want to figure stuff out for themselves. They want to believe things that nobody's ever believed before. They want to test boundaries. They want to test limits. That all of those things are natural things that are happening in their brains. But again, coming back to the idea of containers, the container that we've created around them is not one that allows for the exploration of those things. Once upon a time, kids used to go and play out in the park and climb a tree and test their boundaries, or used to go to a youth club and play pool or table tennis or have some time with some youth workers or whatever. But now they just live in their bedrooms online, and so there's a lot of risk there, and a lot of hidden risk, risk that we can't see directly. But I don't think the solution is going to be like just erasing it all. I think that we're going to have to teach them how to navigate that risk, like how to like figure those things out for themselves, and how to be creative, and how to also turn those things into opportunities to be the people that they want to be in the world.
Yeah, and it all starts in the family home.
Yeah. Well, for the kids that are lucky enough to have a family home, yeah.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's also a lot of kids who are in the care system. There's a lot of kids who are not even in the care system. There's a lot of kids who are just in the streets, like just outside. Like, there are a lot of kids who grow up in environments where they don't have a trusted adult who cares about them or has their well-being in mind. Yeah. And so I think as well as the family home, we also have to build structures and institutions around these young people that can hold them and can guide them in the right direction in the absence of those parental figures or role models in their homes and in their private lives,
And do you see that happening, like in the spaces that you're in, the conversations that you do have?
I think I see it happening is in community.
Because there was something passed, wasn't there? For the first time, there was like I was to do with male suicide, but there was in Parliament there was something passed that was like, okay, this is actually a problem now. Yeah,
the what's it called?
Legislation. Or
boys and men. But yeah, there was a big thing around International Men's Day where they said we're going to invest in talking about masculinity with boys and ending gender-based violence. And I think that is a great step in a good direction. I think when you look into it in some more detail, I don't know if it's as promising as it maybe seems like it would be. But I think also we're reaching a point as a nation and maybe globally where we might not be able to trust like the institutions that we've always trusted. We might not be able to trust the government to fix our boys for us, like it might not work in that way anymore. And I feel like we may be approaching a point where like communities are going to have to take this stuff seriously and really invest in the well-being of because there are so many, like one thing that I know for sure is that of every, like, I don't think I've spoken to a parent or a carer personally who doesn't care about their kids. I don't think I've spoken. I'm not doubting that there are people like that out there, but I haven't come across them. I think every single person I speak to cares about their kid being okay. They might have a different vision of what okay looks like for their kid. They might have a different sense of what them doing well in life looks like. And for some people that might be, my kid needs to learn how to fight and how to defend themselves because the world is a cold place. For other people, it might be they need to make money because they need to be able to provide for themselves and for the people that they care about. Or it might be they need to have good mental health and mental well-being because life is difficult and they need to be resilient or whatever. But I think one thing we share in common is that for most of us, we care about the young people in our lives being okay and the people around us in our communities being okay.
But do we care about it more than having 2 holidays a year or something like in that comparison that's we actually prioritize money and somewhat of like retirement, let's say. I don't know, but like if you really laid it out, we outsource our kids' education and we spend our time working. And
pay for their education.
For sure.
In lots of
it just
ways,
seems like, okay, maybe we need to readdress how we're all actually living. If our priorities are our children, our families, maybe we need to take some of that time to like really build community again. And like spend time with the people around us and in our communities and not like, I honestly think like if people took 10 grand pay cuts, they'd have more time, but they'd have less money and they'd do less things. Everyone seems to be doing a lot of stuff. You know, our culture has got ourselves into this, like everyone's kind of somewhat in the zeitgeist or in these silos of like, all, our ancestors didn't really do so much. They just were present and they cooked and they lived where they lived and they might have gone on holidays in the country now and again, but I honestly believe if we readdress how we actually live, that there could be a radical shift of like what we spend our time doing and how we spend our time. Because kids leaving home like early is like successful. I was like, I don't know if that is like, it seems a real disappointment when a child stays at home, and I just think that's all wrong. Like we want that kid when did we get to this point where like leaving home was like at a certain age was successful? Because like the tightness of a family, yes, I get boundaries and go off and travel and that, but like, you know, there is a psychological element to that which is necessary. But
capitalism, consumerism is an inextricable part. Like it's inextricably linked to the issue, right? Like I think you can't talk about men and masculinity without addressing those other two parts of the puzzle, which is like being a man is so heavily tied to making money and providing, or making money as a status symbol, you know, like making money to prove your worth and your value to other people and doing all of these things. And that rat race is like, we know that it's bad. We know that it's bad for all of us. We know that the outcome of it is not happy, healthy human beings. And so I think, the difficulty is I don't think you can mandate it. I don't think that you can force people into taking it seriously. I think that people have to go on the journey to explore what that thing is for them, where they learn it, whether it works for them, what they would change about it if they could change it at all. And so facilitating space for that conversation or for that exploration, I think is really valuable. And also really difficult because there are lots of people who buy into the framework even though it harms them, you know? And that's not the only one. Like there are so many frameworks that we all buy into that cause harm to all of us. But I do think, when it comes to like, especially when it comes to like protecting our boys, one of the most valuable things, like I always say to adults when we're running teacher training or when we're running parenting workshops, like, I know you've come here because you want to help the boys, but that's 3 steps ahead. Like, first of all, we've got to figure out how to help ourselves. So like before we dive into like, what's the issue with these boys and why are they thinking the way that they're thinking and what's the problem with them, we also have to think about our own relationship to this structure and how we've arrived here, and whether maybe it's causing harm to us, because they learn from us. Like they watch us, they observe us, they pick up all of the things that we're teaching, and then they will carry on, they will walk their own paths and figure their own things out. But like sometimes it feels like we want to solve the problem without having to change anything about ourselves, and I don't think that's a possibility, really. So that it's difficult. Like it's a tough conversation, man. It is like challenging. We were doing some work with a police force somewhere in the north of the country, and I always say whenever I work with the police, like my main objective is to get people to quit. You know, like not to get people to quit, but like when you. Like, I have an interesting relationship as a black person to the police anyway, but like even more so now, having worked in police forces and spoken to these men about masculinity and about gender-based violence and preventing harms, and their relationship to women and girls, and their relationship to men and boys, and all of these kinds of things. And for so many of them, what you realize is that they feel very stuck. They feel very trapped inside a system, and they don't know how to get out of it. And they're also experiencing like horrific stuff. Like they're seeing crazy things. They're busting into houses and coming across people in situations that are very precarious. There's a lot of like scary stuff that people are seeing, and I think, at what point do we acknowledge that maybe that's not great? Like at what point do those men think this is impacting the way that I'm relating to my partner and to my kids and to my family, and maybe this is not a healthy thing for me to keep throwing myself into, and maybe I need to change? Because for like so often police are super interesting because they see things in black and white. Like they're very like there's heroes and there's villains, there's good guys and there's bad guys. I'm the police, I'm here to catch the bad guy.
That keeps them sane,
right? And they have to box things in that way in order to be able to do their job, but at the same time it doesn't allow for any of the nuance of humanity. Like it doesn't allow for any of the back and forth of like, oh, you're the police but you also caused harm to this person, and you're the officer but you also maybe are not being faithful in your relationship, or you're not doing the right things, or all of this stuff that's also going on at the same time. And so I think so often that conversation can very quickly become about my son is doing this stuff online and I want to stop it, rather than like I need to think about my own relationship to
100%.
My masculinity.
What can you take responsibility for?
Yeah, exactly. And how will that transform
imagine
your
asking
family?
that question to a mother who is like a son that's acting out. It's like, okay, firstly, we'll definitely get to that priority, but what can you take responsibility for? It's radical when people just don't think that is a thing, and it has to be somewhat of like a part of the piece. Like it's like any relationship, it's never one person, and it's hard. And then people will also say to you who's advocating potentially for like there's probably context here. It's like you'll get like also a bit of charge from someone who will then start to think that you're making excuses or for this person.
Oh yeah,
and it's like that happens as well. Long live nuance. I mean, it's nuance is kind of dead.
You know, there's something like super uncomfortable. Just when you said, imagine asking a mother, I was like, oh, don't ask the mother though. But there's something really uncomfortable about that, because I feel like, do you have Sky? You're definitely not gonna have Sky.
No, TV.
You don't watch TV. I just watched a show called All Her Fault on Sky, which is about like a kidnapping that happens and like who's to blame for this kidnapping. No spoilers, but worth a watch. It gets a bit rubbish around like episode 5, 6, and then it gets good again at the end.
You had discipline.
I saw it through to the end. But I always feel like, especially in that conversation about like mothers, and this is a generalization, it's not always the case every single time, but it feels like mothers are always expected to take responsibility for their kids. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it's their job to fix it, and the dads are always like super just absent. Like not absent, they might be present, but like we never say to dads, what can you change? We always say to mums, what can you change? And the mums are always constantly trying to change, or the mums that I've seen anyway, like my mum in my own life, the mums that I'm in community with, my sisters and whoever else, like seem to be very actively thinking about every single decision and what impact that has. And they don't always get it right, but I think they try really hard. Whereas the men kind of get a pass to like, as long as you're doing the things, it's fine. But I do think, you are right also that every single person, like we as a society, every single one of us has to think seriously about what role we play in this and what we are perpetuating and replicating and what we want to change. And if we want to change it, what things do we have to change in our own lives to start seeing that happen?
100%. And that can be something simple, like walking down the street and seeing like I say this because there literally is down the street, an area where it's just like a garden that no one really takes care of. It's just littered full on. And I'm like, I cannot moan about that if I don't do anything about it. It's so simple.
Yeah.
But like, I'm going to get some people from the community and we're going to go clean it up.
Yeah.
Simple metaphor for many things that we all have an opinion of, but what are we actually doing to contribute physically to the thing? Yeah.
And it's this crazy puzzle of like individual action, community action, pressuring governments, applying pressure to governments and local authorities to also, because the other reality is we all pay taxes. So somebody should be picking up the rubbish when people are putting it in the garden. Like there shouldn't be rubbish in the garden. And that to some extent is our own responsibility as a community, and we shouldn't be littering in the garden. But also, what happened to all of the street sweepers? Like, where are the people that clean the roads? Where have they all gone? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there's loads of levels to all of these conversations. And what you often find is that whenever you get to like the tension points in a conversation, people start pointing fingers, and they always point fingers away from themselves. No matter who it is, all of us will point towards this person's not doing their job over there, that person's not doing this thing. None of us ever think, oh, what am I? Like, how am I complicit in this? How am I responsible for it?
This is men's work for me, because this is the arenas I'm in, right? It's the retreats I put on. It's the first question, okay, you're in this pain, or this is challenging. What are you taking responsibility?
What can you do about it?
Yeah, what are you going to do about it? Yeah. It's so fundamental, and it really brings back, and of course there's a hyper focus on the individualistic the culture that we live in. There's a hyper focus on ourselves, in healing, but also just in how we live. We don't know who's around us often. We just live in these boxes and boxes. Yeah. But the circle and the no doubt there's so many crossovers with the work you do and what I do from a different point. But it is about creating accountability. It's about creating a shared agreements. Like, what are we all agreeing on here? And then how do we move forward with that? Because we support and challenge each other in a good way. Like we there has to be some sort of tools, some element of like facilitation, someone who's somewhat holds some level of power, whether that's in a community or someone holds something, not because they know better or they are going to use it wrongfully, but it's about just understanding what people's roles are within the community as well. Yeah. within the facilitated order of things. Like, we need to understand that transparency. But it's important to take accountability and take ownership. These are like fundamental things. Yeah, and they're tough. They're not easy to do, man. I think this is where the easy stuff to talk about is like, how do we get them in the circle, and how do we like have the conversation, and what is the amazing stuff that comes out of it? The hard stuff is like, how do we remunerate people for their work fairly? Like how do you make sure that all of the people that are giving their time and their energy are being fairly paid for doing all of this stuff? Like I work in a gender equality organization, and the most difficult things, like the actual difficult things in our organization, are not the workshops with the boys, not the workshops with the men. The difficult things are the pay bands, and like making sure that like the women in our organization aren't just doing all of the emotional labor in the organization. They're not just doing they're not just the only people organizing the Christmas dinner. Like, how do you, when all of those things are happening at the same time, like that point you're making about the person in the space with the power who's in the facilitation role, it's the distribution and the redistribution of that power that is the difficult thing. The hard thing is not
like establishing a power position. It's like once I'm in that position, I found this, I've been here for like 10 years in this organization now. So there are a lot of things, and I've been quite visible over my decade in the organization. So there are a lot of things where people just assume it's me. They just assume I'm the person making the decisions or calling the shots, when actually there's a whole team of people around me who are in positions where they're making decisions and they don't get any of the accolades, they don't get any of the celebration, they don't get invited to any of the podcasts. In some cases, they don't want to be. In other cases, they may want to be. But I think it's those conversations that actually are about fixing the problem. You know, it's not just about the peacocking with the stuff that we're doing and the events that we're putting on and the conversations we're having. It's also about when rubber hits road, like how do we make sure that these women are not being spoken over in this team meeting? How do we make sure that people's opinions are valid and they're heard and they're held? And also, we don't always get that stuff right. Like we are, like I said before, we're still on that journey and we're still learning those things as well. But so important. That's why the community aspect of it is so crucial, because as soon as community is removed from the equation, you will get it wrong. Because there are certain things that matter to you more than they matter to other people. And there are certain things that matter to other people that don't matter to you at all. So you would never think about them. So you've got to have that like collaboration of voices around and people constantly having the push and pull and the challenge. And I think that's the bit that gets tricky. But that is like the actual core of it, you know. It's much less about like the workshops are cool and I think they're important. And in lots of cases, they're very impactful and very transformational. Yeah. But there is like the deeper work of actual relationships, working relationships, friendships, all of those things that have to happen to make sure that the ship can sail, you know? It's a random point.
Great. All great random points. Yeah. This has been great, man. Yeah, it's been so fun to
thank you, man.
To chat.
It's been lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's been good, man. I could talk for you for days. I hope we'll do around two at some point. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I do respect you massively.
Oh, thank you, man.
What you do and how you do it, and the themes you speak to, they really land. Like it's humanity and it's the nuance and it's holding space for difference, but also like compassionate inquiry that I see, and just real authentic relational aspects that you do. It's all happened. I don't know how.
Yeah, neither do I.
But I see so many elements of what you do, and I'm like, is there any more of these guys? And I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are many, and they exist. But yeah, I see you as unique, and I wish there was a lot more men like you in the world.
Thank you, man.
So just keep doing what you're doing, and there will be.
I'll send 2 more of them next time. I'll send the others. They can come and do the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
But yeah, no, I appreciate greatly. Anything you want to leave us on? Anything coming up that you're excited about? Or
no, not at the moment. I feel like anything I say now is going to be premature, and I don't know if I have permission to say anything. Oh, this is a good one.
Go on.
I was in the TED Global Ideas Search. Sorry, am I looking at the wall?
No. These heaters turn on, so it's going to get hot.
Yeah, I was in a TED Global Ideas Search, which is like a competition that TED put on to get speakers from all of the flagship TEDx's and do a big competition thing. But there's a TED Talk coming out in February. Maybe February, I think. A really short one, but it's pretty good. I think I did better than I did last time, so check it out. Don't let me know if I didn't do better. Just keep it to yourself.
You got 180,000 views. I'm sure you're going to beat it.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it will be impactful, you know?
Well, that was London people. Women, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So this one is with...
This is TEDx London. Straight. And then the winner goes to Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I won there. But we'll see. All will be revealed. But yeah, no, check that out. Great, if it comes out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, bro.
We always end with the hug. So. Normally on the floor.
Do I have to come all the way? Are you coming?